What's the most awkward situation you've ever been in with a stranger? I worked security at an aquatic theme park and was watching Jeopardy in the employee entrance. One of the veterinarians came through and watched it with me for a bit. He said he watches it religiously and he'd passed the test for the show and was hoping to get selected. He'd heard that they like to have a diverse group of contestants and they hadn't had a black guy for a while, so he liked his chances. A few days later, there are 2 black contestants, so when I see him leaving the next time I say, "Hey, did you catch Jeopardy last week?" "No, why?" he responds. "There were 2 black guys on it," I explain. He just stares at me blankly for a few seconds and walks off. That's when I realized it was a different gentleman than I had the previous conversation with. The most awkward moment of my life thus far was with a stranger. I was in Quebec airport going through customs with my family. Because of some recent changes to their system, they didn't have everyone in a line, but instead in a large pen, where they would release 50 people at a time. Chaos. When my family is at the front, they release us and everyone is running forward in a mass trying to get to the kiosks. Next to me is a tall Swedish man trying to get his family a kiosk. He is running forward and waving his arm behind him in a come on motion, clearly frantic. Well, somehow the worlds aligned where his middle and pointed finger went perfectly into my 2 nose holes. Perfectly, as he then ripped his arm upwards to motion his family forward. My nose was also ripped forward and I immediately began bleeding everywhere. He looked at me in horror. My family looked at me in frustration as we needed to get to a kiosk. The customs agents looked at me in bewilderment. The language barriers made the situation all the more awkward. Woman at a gas station didn't know how to put air in her tires, so I helped her because I wanted to put air in my tires and didn't want to wait all day to do it. She called her husband on speakerphone to let him know she found some nice man to help her air her tires. Then I hear him call her an idiot and say that I'm only helping her because I want to duck her, and where does she get off talking to other men? She stammered and tried to explain that nothing was going on between us. After she got off the phone, she looked at me as if her husband just caught her ducking me and got in her car and left. No thank you, no nothing. And for some reason I felt guilty for even helping her out. Jesus, I feel awkward just thinking about it. At the airport, I walk up as the elevator door is closing and there is a woman inside with a stroller. I slowed down because I wasn't in a hurry and would rather catch the next one. Then I saw a little girl about 2 or 3 is playing in a flower pot thing nearby. I realized she was likely meant to be on the elevator with her mom, but the doors are closed by the time I put it together. I walk up to her and said, "Did your mommy get in the elevator?" She just shyly smiles. I sit down with her and decide to wait in place for a few minimums for the mom to realize. A minute or 2 later, a man walks up and says, "Excuse me, can I have child?" in a thick Russian Y accent. I was trying to decide what to ask to figure out if she was his kid when the elevator door reopened and the woman came flying out yelling for the girl. She hops up happily and runs over to the mom. I stared at guy with an accusing look, then he turned and got in the elevator too. IDK, what the heck was going on there? Was he with them? Did he think I was trying to take their kid? Was he a creeper following them? So awkward. I literally sat silent through the whole weird encounter. It was my first time voting in a presidential election in 2016 since becoming old enough to do so, and polling place was at a library. When I get to the front of the line and start filling out the required papers, I mention it's my first time and what to do next. After hearing this, the woman who was working there and helping me raised her voice and said, "Hey everyone, we've got a first time voter here," and started clapping, so they all would clap as well. Nobody clapped, and I was just standing there really embarrassed before quietly saying, "Can I just go vote now?" Similar story, the first time I went to get a pedicure, I went with my mother-in-law. She's a very loud woman who often doesn't understand what she's saying. She kept screaming, "Be gentle with her, she's ATO virgin. She's ATO virgin. Don't pound her. God help me, I will never go back." Hooked up with a guy in college and fell asleep in his dorm room. I woke up in the middle of the night needing to pee, so ducking badly, but unable to find any of my clothes right away. I ended up spending so long trying to find them in the dark that by the time I had enough to wear out in the hall to get to the bathroom, I didn't think I'd make it. He was still sleeping, so I grabbed a big reusable water bottle and squatted over it. It was blissful relief until I looked over and saw his roommate staring at me in horror. I was that room at once. My old roommate sex was a sleepwalker and was really bad when she was tipsy. One night I hear my door open and she's walking into my room stark naked. She opens up my laundry basket and squats on it, and I'm with my GF. So I'm whispering, Amy, PSSST. WTF are you doing? Amy, PSSST, and yep, she takes a big healthy piss on all my clothes. As I'm still trying to whisper her awake without waking my GF up, she just kind of snaps out of it. The glassy eyes become focused and she goes, oh my god, and runs out. Next day I leave for work and I come back to all my clothes washed and folded with a case of beer in my room. When I was young, I thought some random lady was my mum and tugged her skirt. She turned, screamed, and I screamed back. Not my proudest moment. Once I was in McDonald's parking lot with my friends waiting to get in my friend's dad's car, and I saw a car that looked identical to the one I needed to get into. So I get into it, and turns out it isn't the car I was supposed to be in. The stranger's expression of pure fear still pops into my head time to time. When I was a teenager, my friends and I would spend the weekend staying up late playing video games and eating junk food. I was also a cross-country runner, and on this particular night I was experiencing some extreme chafing from a long run earlier that day. While we were at the gas station getting Doritos and energy drinks, I announced to who I thought was my friend, "Man, my nipples really hurt." Upon realizing it was a complete stranger with whom I had just shared this intimate detail, I simply stared at him and said, "You're not my friend," and walked away. I didn't go back to that gas station for a long time. Edit. I'm a guy for those wondering. I worked at Old Navy and some lady was looking at men's shirts and she stopped me and held up this shirt and asked if I thought it would fit her son. I looked around and no one else was around. We stood in silence for maybe 30 seconds before she started laughing and said, "Oh, haha, you don't know my son, he lives in Michigan. We were in Washington state. Never mind me, I'm just stoned. Haha." And then she went and bought the shirt. My mom asked some kid in a plants store if her boyfriend would know how to work the microwave she was looking at. She's a goof. At an art studio in LA, my girlfriend was wearing a denim jacket. As we looked at a piece together, out of the corner of my eye I saw the jacket and I reach over to grab her butt. A sudden "no" comes from beside me, and a woman 30 years older than me is standing there blushing. I tell her I thought she was someone else and run away to my girlfriend. A few minutes later the lady comes and finds us to talk about young love and how cute we are while making too much eye contact with me. Posted this before. That time I screamed at a woman over poo. My little village has a small annual dog show. We normally enter our little dog who has one friendliest dog, Waggy's tail, and dog the judge would like to take home in the past. This year she was unfortunately in season, so we didn't enter to prevent any fuss from the other dogs, but took her along to watch. Halfway across the park she decided to poo, and I suddenly realized I'd forgotten a bag. There were loads of other people with dogs around due to the show, so I wandered away a little to ask someone for a bag. I turned back, and to my horror a lady was picking up my little dog's mess. Not wanting to feel like one of those a-holes that doesn't clean up, I ran towards her to advise her she didn't have to do that because I was going to get it. Instead, in a sort of panic, I waved my arms and barked, "No, that's my poo." Please note that I did not say, "That is my dog's poo." She physically jumped and turned a deep red. She sort of mumbled an apology, dropped the poo, and marched off with her dog. It was at that point that I looked to my left and saw my dog's poo sitting a few feet away from the lady's dog mess that she was attempting to pick up. I think about this at night sometimes. At a movie theater, I went alone, and so did the guy sitting next to me, and the couple sitting next to us was having a pretty heavy makeout session. I was at a movie theater with my brother. We were watching Pacific Rim. During the action scenes he had to fart like a methodica, so he waited until the music was at its loudest to be inconspicuous. The second he lifts his butt cheek and begins, the music stops and all everyone can hear in the movie theater is giant foghorn of a fart. Imagine the music in action scenes, how it builds and builds and builds, then has a moment of silence for a bit more drama. Then a ducking shart sounding fart takes it over. The reactions from the people in the theater were laughter, WTF, S, and wow really S. We were laughing so bad we were crying. Anyway, just wanted to share lol.